Last night, for the first time in a long time, I felt hope. Are you feeling the hope? There is hope. Now, as a former Air Force officer, well, I can tell you, there are dark clouds rolling across this land. But above those clouds is a bright sun. And as a Christian, I can tell you that above the sun on earth is the sun of love in heaven. And from him comes hope. I hope that you will take the hope from this place and spread it everywhere. Because what we really need is a contagious hope to reinvigorate America. Now, I would love to tell you about how to have hope. I'd love to tell you all kinds of good news. I love being the bearer of good news. I've been asked to give you a snapshot of the U.S. economy. It's not happening, yeah. When I was 14, I read The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. And I just remember thinking over and over, the decline was so obvious. Where were the good Romans? Where were the good men and women who were willing to stand up and fight against it? And then here I am in America today, and the decline is so obvious. And my question becomes, where are the good women and women who can see the decline and take a stand against it? I can tell you, the good news is I have found those people. They're in this room. They're watching online. We are those people who are going to take a stand against this nonsense in our country today. Now, I want to make sure you understand that just as the Americans have stood for what's right in the past, they triumphed over even greater odds than we have today. Realize America triumphed over Nazis' aggression. It triumphed over the Cold War communists' infection. It has been triumphing for 200 years, and we're just part of that legacy. Now, the Romans finally realized, as we have finally realized, that the real threat is from within. But unlike the Romans, we also know that we have the real savior within. I intend today to give you a snapshot of the U.S. economy. I'm going to talk about the dollar as a reserve currency, about inflation. I'll conclude with some ideas to kind of figure out how to fix the macro picture, and hopefully how you can safeguard some of your personal wealth. I realize, though, that a lot of people think that economics are a little bit boring, so I'll try to add some Western color. Basically, economic figures sometimes are so dry that the bushes follow the dogs around. All right. So, where are we today? Most people don't even talk about deficits and debt anymore. I mean, our debt is over $30 trillion. That number is completely unfathomable to the human mind. So how about we just look at the interest we paid last year on our $30 trillion debt? How much did we pay in interest? You know, you pay credit card interest. Last year, we paid $413 billion as interest on our loan. Now, to put that into perspective, that's more than the entire GDP of Israel or of Norway, or of more than 100 other countries around the world. Their entire GDP is lower than the interest we're paying on our debt. The U.S. stock market has just endured its longest losing streak in over a decade, and there's other signs of its not remaining strong well into the future. The bond market has almost been forgotten. But let me just make sure you guys understand that it's ringing an alarm bell like never before. You see, well, actually it has rang it before, but it's been accurate every single time. When we have what's called an inversion of the U.S. Treasury notes yield curves, what that means is that people are very pessimistic. The 10-year, I know I'm getting too technical, so I'll try to explain it in simple words. The 10-year bond price, how much you expect yielded from that 10-year bond, actually is lower than the 2-year bond yield price, which is to say people are more comfortable investing in 10 years than they are in the next 2 years. And when that inversion happens, it's been the most steady indicator of recession for the past 60 years. That inversion happened in April. Typically, what will happen is the stock market will go up another 10 to 12% after that, and then you'll end up with a recession. Morgan Stanley says we have a recession in the next 12 months. The German Deutsche Bank says that we'll have a U.S. recession in the year 2023. One poll of U.S. CEOs shows that the CEOs in America, more than half of them agree that a recession is imminent. Now, people keep touting the idea that unemployment is low, because it's at 3.6%. It's super low, that's true, but it's not necessarily a good thing. On May 30th, just a few days ago, a federal board governor, Chris Waller, admitted that for every 2 vacancies of jobs in America, there's only 1 person looking for a job. The problem is that people have left the workplace and aren't going back into the market. Now, what I really don't like is our current regime's explanation of this to the public, to the people. Because what they're saying is this impending recession is due to greedy industrialists and business people. This is disingenuous at best. To put it into the vernacular of our conference, this is complete, absolute, and utter horse hockey. A cowboy would probably say that if you believe this lie, you couldn't hit the ground with a hat given 3 throws. So, thank you, yeah. The problem is government policy, not gritty business people. It's a result of the government overspending and overprinting. If you want a world government, what you've got to do is take down the United States' military and economic dominance. And the best way to take down the United States is to devalue its currency. None other than communist, revolutionist Vladimir Lenin said, the best way to destroy the capitalist system is to debauch the currency, unquote. Of course, I wouldn't take a Democrat's word, I mean a communist word, for anything. It's easy to get those confused. Instead, we actually have a more credible source in John Maynard Keynes, who said, quote, there is no subtler, no surer means of overturning the existing basis of society than to debauch the currency, unquote. I believe one of the worst lingering effects of COVID will be the destruction of the dollar's preeminence as the world's reserve currency, and that in effect, this administration's cure will prove worse than the disease. Let me explain. The world's reserve currency means the type of money that's used in international transactions. If, say, India wants to buy wool from Scotland, they will use US dollars to do it. 60% of all transactions in the world are using US dollars. And to put that into context, there's only about 2% that use the RMB from China. Now, the thing is, the dollar gets a lot of benefits from this because that means there's demand for the dollar. If 60% of the transactions in dollar, all the local governments, the national banks, have to have lots of dollars in their banks. And the reason why this is the case is because we have had historically the strongest economy. It's the most stable, and that's not a pun. I know I like puns, but it's the most stable currency out there. It's backed by the strongest economy, and really it's backed by these things: the rule of law, transparency, and checks and balances. And that's why we are the world's reserve currency. And all those things have been coming into question in the last 2 years. Some people have speculated why there's inflation, so I'll give you my 10 cents worth. Well, it's inflation. I'm going to give you a quarter's worth. The U.S. government has got too many debts. It had too many debts, so it printed money. Now, I want you to think about this. In 2000, the Fed said that we had 1 trillion total U.S. dollars circulating around the world. 1 trillion, year 2000. By the year 2020, we had $4 trillion circling around the world. In 20 years, we had a 4-fold increase of the money supply. Now, get this. Under the current regime, we went from $4 trillion to $20 trillion circulating the earth, a 5-fold increase in under 2 years. You can't do that without inflation because the dollar and its value has plummeted. Inflation right now, they're saying, is hovering around 8%. There's lots of other figures, but just realize that it could be far worse. Before World War II, Germany's Weimar Republic printed so much money that the price of bread rose from 160 marks to 200 billion marks in just 1 year. Can you imagine that happening? I can't imagine that happening in America either. But the point is, a strong economy leads to peace, and a weak economy leads to war, or even accepting of war. I don't think that Putin would have gone into Ukraine had we not had a weak economy. President Jefferson even says, quote, "It is incumbent on every generation to pay its own debt as it goes, a principle which, if acted on, would save 1/2 of the wars of the world," unquote. So here's the real danger, though. While we've been printing a lot of money and therefore causing inflation and causing our dollar to tumble in its actual value, the world's national banks are looking at us and realizing if they hold dollars, they're losing money. Every year they're losing 10% or so of their wealth. So what are they going to do? Here's the real danger. They're going to start selling their dollars, creating another tsunami of dollars into the system. And that is now happening. European banks and even the Bank of Israel this year have decided to reduce their holdings of dollars and instead have other currencies in their reserve holdings. Other factors are also attacking the dollar. That would include things like digital RMB, the central bank digital currencies in general, cryptocurrencies, the rise of SDR. If you're interested in any of those kind of cool things, at 11 o'clock we'll have a workshop on that. As far as the U.S. economy is concerned, the Fed is basically trying to do a balancing act, and I don't have trust that they will succeed. They want to make a soft landing. They want to raise interest rates just enough to stop inflation, but not hurt employment and create a recession. But they have to do this while the supply chain is severely damaged, Workforce shortages are all over the place. There's congestion points. There's lack. I mean, in this hotel alone, last night, there were probably 60% of the tables open on one of the restaurants, and they couldn't seat anybody for another 2 hours because they don't have people who are willing to work. We have lack of transportation. We have rising oil prices. And we have an unjust war of aggression in Ukraine. All right, the bottom line is we do have low unemployment, but we're still probably heading for a recession. Even more dangerous, if we keep printing money, we risk destroying the dollar as the world's reserve currency. And that would be catastrophic for the economy. On our present course, we may still be maybe less than a decade away, but at some point on our present course, there'll be a total meltdown of the U.S. economic system. And in turn, that will pull the world down. And it will require an adjustment just as severe as Bretton Woods in 1944. If it happens, what will be the replacement of the dollar will be a worldwide global digital currency controlled by some world organization, and you will have traded all of your liberty for the false promises of security and prosperity. You have to understand this. This is not just about America. It's about freedom for the entire world. Just like Israel, I believe that God has blessed this world through the United States of America. We are a blessing to the nations. Despite what the liberal media report and tell you, I served in the military. I've been to 54 countries on 6 continents. I've studied 10 languages, and I can tell you this for a fact. The United States flag stands for freedom, not just from sea to shining sea, but on every shore of the earth. And freedom rings not just in Philadelphia. It echoes in places like China and Russia, where there are people who want to know, is your system good enough? Is your system better? Will you beat the tyranny that is in their countries? Fellow patriots of Colorado and citizens of America, we are bankrupting our country. We're destroying the future of our children. We're weakening the spread of freedom and democracy abroad, and we're turning into just another socialist state. The world does not need another socialist state. The world needs a strong United States of America. So how do we get our country off this path? We need conservative leaders who will stop printing money and start buying it back. We need to balance budgets, and I say if our governing politicians cannot balance a budget, they should have their pay docked, because that's their job. We need a government that's not just of the people and by the people, but that actually works for the people. In Western terms, we need to cinch up our belts, folks. We need to hit the trail, and we can't be afraid of just a few saddle sores. This won't make me popular, but I'm not a politician. And if I were, I wouldn't be a popularitician. I wouldn't be somebody who follows the masses instead of leading them. What we need are statesmen who will do the right thing regardless of what's popular, regardless of what's pragmatic, and regardless of what's in their own personal interests. We must focus America on real economic issues rather than excessive equity politics or egregious government regulations. Pretty much every economic idea of the left is seriously flawed. Seriously flawed. We need businesses to diversify, mostly their supply chains, so that we can build agility into our systems. Too many businesses had no backups, nothing but a single source supplier. That's why the supply chain's broken. We need cap and trade only in the sense that we cap the government's intrusion, that we increase our oil supply and international trade so we can empower the free market to transition to renewable energy. Let's build a system that gives people a hand up, not a hand out. I have many more ideas, but they'll have to wait because I want to get into a little bit about your personal wealth. Inflation will erode your buying power. It's going to impact your credit card rates, your auto loans, your adjustable mortgages, and small business loans. In the near term, commodity prices for things like food and metals and oil will all probably continue to rise. I even see long terms of inflation right on the horizon. The world's population is no longer incorporating all those Chinese people who didn't have jobs, but rather we're having job shortages in America, Europe, and even in China. Abortion is finally catching up with them. Let's hope that we get rid of it before it catches up with us. Resource scarcity is on the horizon, and so we need to dig deeper wells and deeper mines just to get the same amount of commodities. In the near term, what you could do is buy maybe $10,000 a year of inflation-linked savings bonds. Those things are guaranteed to rise higher than inflation, but really all you're doing is treading water there. You definitely need to start switching to commodities or stocks that involve commodities. just realize this: in a high inflation environment, cash is trash in the sense that basically there's a tax. Inflation is a tax on uninvested money. So invest your money wisely. I don't think we're out of the woods. I think we might be just entering the woods economically. Edmund Burke is reported to have said, "All that is required for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing." Right. We must do something. A lesser-known quote of his, though, is that the people never give up their liberties, but under some delusion. Today, our country is deluded, and that's why this conference is so important. There is something we can do, and we need to leave here not just decrying the diseases, but also clarifying the cure. Our goal has to be to generate new wealth, not just redistribute what we have. Ronald Reagan used to say that was simply higher taxation was only sharing of scarcity. We must pass laws that reward hard work and risk-taking, that unbridle the American spirit of energy and genius. We must become more active in government, more vocal in school boards, and more dedicated to sane financial policies. It's time to saddle up. Let's ride together and influence those around us. The bad news today is that we're seeing the decline of our nation. I believe that. The good news today is that with God's hope, we need not see it fall. Our nation has overcome greater challenges in the past. Now we're the chosen generation to be challenged. Our biggest enemy is apathy. Don't let it defeat you. Now is the time to rise. Now is the time to ride. I beg you, work with me. Let's preserve the land of the free and the home of the brave, and not let it become the land of the apathetic and the home of the financially enslaved. Thank you.